Hello everybody, welcome to Talk About Houses. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, so we are going to talk today about the real reason why home prices are skyrocketing. And it's true, inflation is one of them, but there's this other thing that's happening.
Right. So if you haven't figured it out, we like numbers and we like charts, so stay tuned.
Yeah, so and everything we're doing is based on data. So what we're going to do on this video is we're going to start off with we're going to talk about the one thing, then we're going to give you the money shot of the graph.
Yes.
And then we're going to talk about some other things that go along with this that are important to understand because they sort of fill in the cracks and do it. So, okay, the biggest reason is simply we're short homes. We're just short.
So we all know that. We all know that, the inventory is a couple million homes for the whole U.S., and normally our inventory is, like 3 times that, and we could certainly accommodate that. But right now, our inventory is about a couple million homes.
Right. And the way it works is when a home is built, it has a lifespan. They don't all last forever. Sometimes neighborhoods get demolished to build a park, or a neighborhood will get bought up and they'll put condos in there, or a school will take it over, or they just get dilapidated and they get, they're not used or whatever. People move out of cities. You have abandoned stuff in cities and like that. So how do we fix that? We build new homes.
Right.
So we always have to build more new homes than actually people coming into the country and people that are being born, because we not only have to house the new people, we have to replace housing for the old people. Okay? So we're going to put up the chart and have all the fun right now. Okay, so here's the chart. Homes built in the U.S. by decade. Now, if you look all the way on the left, 5.4 million homes were built during the Great Depression. Okay? During the Great Depression, there were about 130 million Americans at the time, okay? And for 130 million Americans, now it was difficult back then. They didn't have supplies, they had plenty of labor, but they didn't have, you couldn't just buy stuff, and they didn't have a buying pool because a lot of people didn't have jobs, 25% unemployment, the whole thing, right?
Well, and also keep in mind that, homes were smaller then, you had multi-generational things going on, so that means that you had grandma, you had your parents, and you had you living in all in the same house.
Okay, the next column over is 1940 to 1949. This is about 10 million. We'll call it 10 million homes built. That's misleading because actually most of that was from 1946 to 49, because there wasn't a lot of building during the war because no one was buying houses because all the people were out fighting the war.
Right. So there were a couple of reasons why houses were not built during the war. So to start with, the men were off at war, and men traditionally were doing the construction work. Yeah. There was the whole material issue where all the materials that could be used were used in the war effort.
Yeah.
And because the men were off at war, there were less babies being born. So people weren't getting married and having babies and moving off into their own homes.
Right. So then you had the post-World War II baby boom and the housing boom. That's really the first housing boom. That's why there's so many homes you see that were built in the late 40s and early 50s that are still out there, and they're all over the place. And then you have just normal, really, let's call it non-wartime. Even though Vietnam was happening, you have which reflects the 60s where it was a little less. It was about 20 million, but every year every decade there were over 20 million homes built. 25 million, over 25 million from the 70s until 2010, and then there was certainly some overbuilding that happened. But then look at the last decade. Under 6 million homes built in the last decade. Now that's a problem.
Well, that's a huge problem. Even if you just consider, just consider immigration and birth rate and that sort of thing, that's less than would accommodate those people.
Now, here's the interesting thing. That number is similar to the number of homes built during the Great Depression. Think about that. The number of homes built in the last decade was about the same as during the Great Depression. Are you ready for this? At the 2020 census, there were 331 million Americans, so there were like almost 3 times as many. It was substantially more people and less housing. And Freddie Mac and everybody else has come out and said we're short housing units. The low estimates are about 5.8 million units. And you're probably thinking, well, shouldn't it be a lot more than that? Well, it's possible it is. It's an estimate. We do have situations today where more people are like roommates.
So we have different social dynamics today than they had back then. To Todd's point, we have more roommate situations. We have people marrying later and having children later. We still have a return to the multi-generational of mom and dad and their kids, and maybe their kids living together. So there are a lot of things going on in today's social fabric than were not going on maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago. But it is in some ways similar to the way it was further back than that. So there are a lot of different situations and variables that some reflect the past and some are different and unique to today, like the whole roommate situation.
Yeah. The unique factors that happen that cause the housing crash, we have a separate set of factors causing, and I won't call it a housing boom because it's not really a housing boom, it's a home value boom. And so you're pricing, okay, but if it's booming like this, then there's got to be the back end. Well, the problem is, until we get more homes being built, we're going to have these problems. Now, I read an article, Forbes, that said this is actually a worse problem. It's not going to get better. And there's a couple reasons why.
Okay.
One is, okay, you ready for this? NIMBYs. Not in my backyard. Hey, we want to build new subdivisions. We want to build denser houses in and around the Bay Area. And they all go, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Streets can't handle it. The schools can't handle it. You got to go way, way, really far out to make a new town, or go to Sacramento, or go like to Modesto, or go to Fresno. Build houses out there, but not in our area. So the problem is you have zoning problems because people don't want more homes in their area because they don't want more people, they don't want more stuff, right?
Well, yeah. So to your point, it's not just homes. It's an issue of density, which people are not fond of, and what density brings with it. So density causes issues as far as school overcrowding, transportation, both in the way of public transportation and the number of people on the roads. So there are all kinds of things that come with density, in particular in cities that are already established, and that infrastructure is already established. So now trying to put more people in the same space makes it very difficult.
Right. The other issue here is that because you have the supply chain problems, that's actually a continuing problem. Okay.
Right.
So the fact that you need a bunch of lumber and you need sheetrock and these things, and the problem with building a house is you can't just go, well, we got everything except for, nails. You can't build a house, right? You need the nail. You need everything. So if you get a little interruption, then it causes a problem. And then the other problem is the cost of the materials. So like wood you see all the jokes on Facebook, I just finished my popsicle, now I realize I have $7 worth of lumber, right? So the builders are hesitant to take the risk to start building, even though inventory would likely just get purchased up. They're still worried about the profit margins because, hey, now it's expensive to build a house. And you get in the situation where if it's cheaper to buy an existing home versus a new one, you tend to not want to buy the new one. And maybe they could build a house, but then it would be $500,000 to build it. And then they're like, but the homes are only selling for $500,000. So there's no profit in it for us.
Right. And the other thing to consider is that, to Todd's point, as far as supply chain, so you get going building the house, and halfway through you've got it all framed and everything, but now you can't enclose the house because you're missing material. And now those trusses and that framing is exposed to the elements longer than it should be, and now you're going to have problems with the frame and that sort of thing. So to Todd's point, you do have to have all the materials lined up before you ever break ground. You cannot say, well, it'll come. This is not if you build it, they will come. This doesn't work that way. You have to have all the materials lined up in order to be able to take a house from dirt to completely enclosed, otherwise it won't go well. And then even once it's completely enclosed, you have to make sure that you have everything that goes in it, because you can't leave plumbing laying there without being used and things like that, because plumbing tends to deteriorate very quickly when it's not used. So there are all kinds of issues with that. So the house really has to be finished material-wise, as far as having all those materials before you ever break ground, in order to have a successful sale of that house and be able to turn it over to an end user and have that be a good product.
Now, I'm going to put the chart back up here because I want to show you something pretty interesting that's going to actually fill in a lot of gaps and make you go, oh, hopefully you have an aha moment. And if you have an aha moment, comment. You got to tell me in the comments, like, oh my gosh, like what you just said makes total sense. Okay, so put the chart back up there. Now remember, there was all that building, the most building ever was between 2000 and 2009, okay? But that's misleading because there wasn't a lot of building going on in 2008 9. There was very little building going on. It was mostly 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 when everyone was in the business of building. They were building high rises. I mean, they were building more than just houses, but there were a lot of homes being built, a lot of homes. And what happened was when that fell off, you had a lot of people out of work. Actually, the number one industry of people that were out of work, you know, that had problems were construction workers. So what happened was they all left. Like some of them went back to like other countries. Some of them just went and got, they went back to college or they got a trade or they did some other stuff. And then as you look at the 2010 to 2019 basically, and you see that there were very little homes built. Well, that means there were very few construction jobs that were out there. So you had all these people who said, I used to do construction, but now I work at a bank or I do some other job. I fix cars or I do some other thing. And they're not in the business. So you can't just turn on building houses over like that, okay? And it's exacerbated right now, and this is why. So imagine you have a fixed number of people that are working in home building, and then you have people that buy houses, and there's this nice balance maybe, and there potentially has been, but there's still a low number of workers compared to what there used to be, right? Now, I want you to add in something. We're going to add in something that changes that. And what we're going to add in is people buying houses going, I just bought this house. It was very competitive, blah, 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 but it's this big house and I like it. But now I need a bunch of work done in it. I need flooring, right? I need kitchen redone. I need painting. I need all this stuff. So you go out there and you go to these contractors, and the contractors are like, hey, I can do it for, $45,000, right? The problem is the contractors, they don't really want to work with the builders. They would rather work with, the homeowners because for a couple reasons. They can make more money. They have much more flexible, like they usually say, I don't have any, I'm like through 3 weeks, I can't do anything. They have a lot more flexibility working with a homeowner than they do with the builder, who's, basically gonna make them work very hard and then tell them they're gonna pay them less, but they're gonna make it up on a lot of volume. And they don't really wanna do that. They wanna come and do a job, get paid well for it, leave. So you have these people who have this incentive to not do it. So you have builders actually, and this is a real thing in the last year, they're just running out of people. Well,
and the thing to also keep in mind, it used to be that builders had their own building crews, but they're using subcontractors a lot more. So to Todd's point, those subcontractors have other jobs to do, including individual homeowners and that sort of thing. And maybe these subcontractors are also working for other builders. So because of this whole subcontractor scheme and the limited trade pool, and this is kind of what you have to kind of keep in mind too, is these trades, they are skilled trades. I mean, you don't just wake up one day and you're an electrician, okay? It actually takes education, it takes practice, it takes an apprenticeship and all this sort of thing. So it takes years for somebody to be an electrician. It's not something that you just kind of pick up on a weekend.
The good news is last year there were about 1.3 million building permits filed in the U.S., which is a substantial number compared to the last decade. If you take that out over 10 years, that's 13 million. That's still less than what we've seen in the past. The problem is that it's taking longer to get stuff approved, and then we have all these supply chain issues and labor issues. So even though these people are saying we really do want to build, they can't. So what should happen in a normal market is demand, a supply would rise to meet demand, but it can't. There's things holding it back. It's exacerbating the problem. And there's really not anything that's happening in the short term that looks like it's going to relieve this. It's just going to keep, we're going to keep having this problem. And, I personally don't want to see a scenario where home prices just keep going up and it makes it harder for people to buy. Because then everything works better when it's at equilibrium.
Right.
And it seems like we've been at disequilibrium for about 16 months or more, maybe 24 months.
Couple years, yeah.
Maybe not, certainly not the start of COVID, but probably by October. No, it was July was when it turned the corner. Foreclosure, like people stopped paying their mortgage for like 3 or 4 months because they didn't have a job, they weren't working. And then all of a sudden, as it started to come back, it just literally took off.
It did, yeah.
And but the number of new homes, I mean, this is really this is the magical thing. This is the thing that is the number one factor that should be driving price is the supply. And there isn't a supply. We should be building 20 million homes a decade. We're not building 20 million homes. If we were building 20 million homes, if we had built 20 million homes last decade instead of under 5 million, we wouldn't be having a problem right now. Yep. Home prices, median home prices would be 315. You could go out and get a home pretty easily, but we don't have that. So what's happening? Other people are saying, you know what, I want a house, and to me it is worth this. And I think when people come in and they establish a value, it's very difficult. And they're honestly, if you look at history, except for the housing crash, 2006 to 2011, which was driven by a ton of different factors, those factors don't exist, and people aren't just going to say, oh my gosh, the housing market's going to fall, I'm going to panic and sell my house that I just bought. They're not going to do that because they know what they went through to buy the house. This is not like a stock where you see a stock start to fall and you panic and sell it, and you have panic selling. That doesn't happen in real estate. It happened with the banks, basically. We did a video on that. Right. You can watch the video. But yeah, look, they just need to build more homes.
Right. The other thing is employment is doing well. Lots of people have jobs. So that is contributing to the support of people making mortgage payments. And to Todd's point, it was painful for people to buy homes. So they're going to hang on to them, and they're going to improve them. And remember, real estate values only matter 2 times. When you're buying and when you're selling. The in-between, that's just kind of noise as far as I'm concerned. It's nice to know that your home went up in value. You cringe when your home goes down in value, but at the end of the day, unless you're buying or you're selling, it doesn't make much difference.
Those people who you hear who say, I bought Apple in the 1980s at some point, they don't, honestly, who cares what it was worth in the 90s or 2000s or whenever? It doesn't matter. It's worth what it is today. It doesn't matter. The in-between is not important.
Right.
And I think that's important for real estate. People get fixed rate loans. Their payment is set. Inflation actually helps them because they get wage increases, but then their payment doesn't change over a long period of time. That's another reason. We have a whole video on this, why this is a good hedge against inflation.
Right.
But that's one of the big factors.
Right. So kind of to your point, and kind of to dovetail with the building. So if you are lucky enough to be buying a new construction home today, and they tell you, okay, sign your contract today, we'll break ground in 60 days and you'll have your home finished by the end of the year. That's great because you're locking in that price today, and whatever that home is worth at the end of the year, at the rate we're going, it will be worth more money at the end of the year when you're actually closing on the home than it was when you signed for it. But of course, when you signed for it, that's the price that you locked in.
Yeah, that's kind of a sweet spot to be in if you're relocating or you're just moving to a new construction home in a rising market. If you're and I would be pretty sure it'll keep rising this year just because we don't have we don't have supply of homes and there's no inventory. But you lock in that price. When you go in the sales office, say, I want to buy this house. Remember, they're trying to get as much as they can, so they're trying to look in the future. But you lock in that price that's locked in, and then you're waiting maybe to sell your house 3, 4, 5 months in the future, and it appreciates $10,000, $20,000, and then you sell it. But you've already locked in this price over here, and then that's sort of the advantage. And anybody who's ever bought in a new home subdivision during a rising market, everybody remembers the base price. I still remember the base price of a Toll Brothers home I bought a long time ago. And I remember walking in, and then I came back, I want to say less than 2 weeks later, and the base price on the same house was $7,500 more. And I was like, whoa. And the girl that worked in the sales office said, oh yeah, we've had 3 $2,500. We had the day after you signed your contract, we did one, and then we sold 2 more houses, or it was because it wasn't a big subdivision, 100 luxury homes, and then Then a week later, we sold 2 more, and then we raised it another. And so they went up $7,500 in 2 weeks. So just because I happened to go, if I'd gone 2 weeks later, I would have paid more money for literally the same house. And it probably not really worth $7,500 more, but that's just how that works. So it's pretty straightforward that we need more homes built, and there's nothing in the pipeline showing that that's going to happen. So except for some, and it's not the war in Ukraine, that's not going to do anything, nothing. So unless there's some black swan thing that happens. Which,
it could, but the way things look right now, real estate here in the US looks pretty strong. Real estate in Las Vegas looks pretty strong. And, we'll keep an eye on the numbers, and we'll get back to you with any changes.
Yep. If you made it all the way to the end, again, thank you very much. Subscribe, notification bell. We say that every video, but chances are most of you are probably subscribed if you're watching all the way in, and we have some people who watch like every video. Right. So
if you liked Todd's aha moment, leave him a comment and give him an attaboy.
Yeah, the aha moment I think is the key, and we did the same thing in the last video. But we always have some kind of insight that a lot of people don't actually talk about, because everyone wants to focus on 1 or 2 things, and you don't want to really see what's happening. And the things that are happening are actually kind of interesting.
Yes.
Yep.
So thank you for watching. Hit the notification bell, like the video, share it, leave us love notes or insightful notes, and we'll see you on the next video.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.